Hello, Internet. So today we are going to help, if I pronounce his name wrong, I'm sorry, Petya, I think it is. He has an ADU7 and an Ecumaster Black, and he's trying to get his fuel temp data from his flex fuel sensor onto the dash. I told him I might make a video, so we're making a video. How I know that that isn't on the standard CAN stream is if I look at it on here, you can scroll through and you won't find it there. You can also look in the ADUs project here. It won't be in this. Oops. It won't be in here either. It should be pretty close to fuel pressure, but it's not. It's not a standard sent item, but that doesn't mean we can't add it. So I don't have a flex fuel sensor on the bench, but what I have instead is the analog 6 input is set to my fuel temperature. So just real quickly, if I change the value of analog 6, which I can do, because I have a basically a potentiometer hooked up to a black on the bench, which is outputting to a USB to CAN. So yeah, I can do that, and that lets me see what's kind of going on there. If I go back to that CAN setup, we'll just make sure that the user-defined dashboard is selected and the rest of it set up to communicate properly. And then I go to Tools, User-Defined CAN Stream. I'm going to add a new message. Let's make this 500, sure. DLCs, leave that alone. Extended ID, we're not doing 29, we're keeping it 11. This would be if you wanted it to receive, and that's probably plenty fine for what we're going to use this for. Don't need to log that at a crazy rate. Go to log channel, type in fuel temperature. And I looked this up already, but it is I tried it already. It is 8-bit unsigned, thank goodness. And then the rest of this I'm going to leave alone and see what we get. Again, if you were doing this on the ADU, it would look exactly the same. It's just instead of using this, you'd be using the bar at the bottom. I'll point that out in a minute. So then I go in here and I change the analog 6 input, and you can see that that first bit, the first byte on there is changing. It kind of maxes out, I see a little bit. So 0 is going to be 0, and since this is CAN, it's always linear. So if I throw it up to the maximum value, I get 7/8. So calculator has this handy feature where I can push 7/8 and convert that to decimal. It's 120, 120, simple enough. If your fuel is 120C, it's probably boiling anyway, and that would be quite bad. So then I take that piece of information I just learned, and I go into the ADU, and I'm going to create first a new message object, CAN2, if it's on CAN1 or CAN2, I don't know. Put your base ID that was in the Ecumaster, and then if we had it hooked up, we could see what was happening there, and you could make changes and so on and so forth. But okay, so I'm going to be fancy and override the existing channel so that temp. So that way, if it's already set up on the logger or the dash, then it's the same. I'm going to choose message object 2 that I just created. I'm going to leave that alone because I want it to catch the first bit anyway. I'm going to ignore this for this particular example. It's not relevant. I'm going to make sure that this is 0, and I'm going to make sure that all this stuff matches the same as what's on the black, and then I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go back to the black just to illustrate that. So byte position 0, multiplier 1, divider 1, offset 0. Love it. Same manufacturer, keeps it simple. So now, if I had the ADU hooked up, I would see the exact same data that I see here whenever I make a change on the graph. And that's all you got to do. If that made sense to you, then stop listening now, because the next thing I'm going to do is take it one notch further and figure out how to get more resolution out of this and change the bit position and all that stuff and what you have to do for any of those. So let's start with bit position, because that's a real easy one. If I wanted to change this, if I want to make more, because I could put more messages on this same address and use up all of the possible bytes on it. But we'll start with moving it over once. You can see it moved there, and lo and behold, it moved over here too. Ta-da. So if I had that, then I'd go in the ADU, I'd go back on this particular message, and I'd change it to byte offset of 1. It's now looking at the second or the sixth, depending on how you're looking at it. I'm going to choose to say the second byte. And yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. So I'll leave that alone and then carry on with my day. And then if I was like, oh, I really want to know what it is down to the 1/2 degree of temperature, for some reason you want to be that accurate when you log it, I would go like this. And then I would go over to here and see what that did. If I max out the value to 5 volt again, it's now FO. And what is FO in decibel? Remember, we can have 250, 0 to 255, or 256 possible values in there. FO is 240, so that's pretty good. You'd be using most of that bit if you felt the need for that. And then I'd go in here and I'd just make the divider 2. Because remember, the multiplier on the sending end has to be undone by the receiving end. So if there's a multiplier of 2, then it needs to be divided by 2 when it gets there. Yeah, so that's just maximizing it. That's kind of a 102 compared to the 101 lesson. Yeah, if you have any other questions, I could do more videos like this. I like specific examples. I think they help the specific person for sure, but also anyone who is trying to do a similar scenario, because the same process can apply to any other value that you could send from the black that's not on its CAN stream. I can't think of another example, but if you had another temperature input from some other sensor that you wanted to see on there, you could kind of do the same process and get the same result.